Hi there and welcome. This is part 2 of the Study and Learning Centre's workshop for HDR research candidates on presenting your research. I'm Dr. Jen Anderson. There are 5 key steps to an effective research presentation. Establishing the context and writing the script were discussed in part 1. In this workshop, we're going to explore the 3 steps of rehearsing and delivering the presentation as a performance, and the final step of responding to feedback for further research development and networking purposes. So here's step 3, rehearsing your script. First of all, I want to emphasize what skilled presenters do. They conduct a voice test prior to presenting. If there's a microphone at the podium, they practice using it. They've considered the audience and the occasion that's brought everyone together and have created a presentation specifically for that audience. They offer deep knowledge of the topic using a logical, coherent structure. They've been careful to select a limited number of key points and use clear speech to explain each point. And their body language and informative visual aids add to the power and clarity of the message. It's time to rehearse. But first of all, you may decide to make cue cards or other prompts. Or if the script is very complex, you may decide to read it. Whichever method you use, you need to be so familiar with the script that you can look up and engage the audience and look down again without losing your place. You're speaking to people, so you need to look at them. Here's an example of a script that has been summarised into cue cards. Notice how the script's divided into meaning sections, and each section is placed on a separate card. This example comes from a presentation for a 3-minute thesis competition. Now that is a really great way to build your presentation skills. RMIT is part of the university 3-minute thesis competition. Okay, so let's rehearse. Set the timer. Stand up when you rehearse so you can fill your lungs with air and project your voice. Speak slowly, especially if you're going to be in a large room. Time yourself to speak at between 120 and 130 words a minute. Practice throwing your voice to the end of the room, not to your notes or your PowerPoint presentation. Try not to look at the visual presentation at all, unless you need to guide the audience to look at a particular aspect of the projected image. Mark these moments in a script. Speak loudly, but don't shout. If your voice is not strong, request a microphone. Make sure you know how to use it before you step up to that podium. And finally, vary your tone and emphasize or stress key points. Mark these in your script. Here are some pointers about marking up intonation and stress in your script or on your cue cards. Accurate intonation and stress support meaning even more than pronunciation does, because they direct the listener to the key words and the storyline. On your script, mark the key words as stress words. We do this by marking the stressed syllables in the key words. See the accents above cup and tea. Next, note the vowel sounds you will not emphasize, so they become what we call a schwa. So we don't say a cup of tea, but a cup of tea. Then mark the words you'll run together. Not a cup of tea, but a cup of tea. A cup of tea. If you can't pronounce a word, it's best not to attempt it in the presentation. Use another word instead. For example, if you keep tripping up on the word encephalograph, use the much easier and more comprehensible brain scan instead. Do this activity. Mark the intonation and stress for this quotation. Pause the video while you work it out. Sir George Jessel, a British judge in the 1800s, said, "Your brain starts working from the moment you're born and never stops until you stand to speak in public." We advise that just as you have received feedback from your supervisors or a critical friend on your script, you should rehearse in front of someone who can check your pace, your voice volume, and the flow of the talk. They can time you. Always aim to finish your presentation 1 or 2 minutes before the time limit, because in real time you'll find yourself adding greetings, referring to the presentations of others, or maybe clarifying points that you're making. Now it's time to deliver your presentation. Step 4. Remember that 70% of communication is non-verbal, and this means that we get our meaning cues from posture, gestures, eye contact, appearance, and facial expression. So when you present, make sure that you stand with the intention to engage your audience. Use gestures that add meaning to the presentation. Don't wave your hands unless you are demonstrating a wave. Let your eyes sweep the audience slowly to show that you're communicating with each and every one. Make sure you're dressed in a way that respects the audience, but also makes you comfortable. And try to smile every now and then to show that you are comfortable and the audience can be too. Use pauses as a way of managing the story. Pause before a new point and stress important points. If you feel in control of your presentation, try observing the body language of the audience. Can you tell how they're feeling? Managing your nerves is important, but also know that a nervous beginning is often welcomed by the audience as a sign of your sincerity. To control your nerves, be well prepared, and then some minutes before the presentation, do some deep breathing exercises. Shake out your shoulders and stamp your feet. And when you present, don't apologize if you stutter or make a false start. Encourage the audience to look at the slides and not at you. And speak slowly and pause and breathe. Show the audience what you have learned. This is what they're there for. The visual aspect of your presentation is also important. Remember that PowerPoint slides have been around for a long time, and unless they add value to your presentation, perhaps you shouldn't use them. And also note that those Prezi presentations can make people feel nauseous if you move between slides too quickly. So keep your visual information simple with plenty of white space. Check for spelling and factual errors. Avoid using uppercase lettering or capitals because they read like a shout. And keep written text to a minimum. Make sure that you don't read directly from the screen. Tables are more difficult to read than graphs or charts, so watch out for information overload. Too much colour or animation is exhausting, so keep it simple. Use no more than 3 colours or 1 or 2 animation actions. And make sure that every slide looks the same in design and format. As we said, don't read from your visual aids, and save your direct quotes for really important messages. Then read them slowly and with emphasis. Sometimes giving the audience a handout is useful, especially if you're presenting data that can't be easily seen on the screen, or if you want the audience to take away some key messages. Make sure to distribute the handouts when it won't worry the audience. Place them on the seats before the presentation, or offer them at the door as people leave. Question time can be a very valuable few minutes when the audience and the presenter come together to share their views. You probably know ahead of time what some of those questions are going to be. So prepare the answers. But if someone asks a question that you don't understand, just say, "Oh, sorry, could you repeat that?" And if someone asks a question you know the group can't hear, repeat it for everyone. If you have a convener at your presentation session, they may perform that role for you, which is really, really great. Remember to be polite about each question and note the interesting questions and why they're interesting. If you need some thinking time, just take it. Pause and breathe and think before you answer. And don't be afraid to reserve an opinion or comment if you're not sure how to answer. Keep your answers short and to the point. Step 5 is reflect and act. Reflect on what happened and make use of it in the future. For example, in a milestone review, can you make use of any feedback you received? Maybe it's about research parameters or related research or academic style. You may be feeling angry if you received negative feedback. Try to remember that feedback is advice. The panel is suggesting that you make changes to your existing practices or your text. If you're feeling too anxious or relieved to hear the advice and take useful notes, ask the panel if they'd mind if you create a voice memo on your phone. You'll be able to play back the oral feedback when you've adequately recovered from your performance and their advice. Feedback invites reflection. Questioning your research is always a valuable experience. If you're not sure how to interpret the feedback, discuss it with your supervisors and others. Sometimes the feedback may not make sense because we don't know how to contextualize it. So be sure to revisit it and consider its implications at a later time. Look at these examples of reflection. Pause the video now. Don't forget to engage with others who listen to your conference presentation. Meet up with the people who asked you questions and extend what you were talking about. Ask questions of others and meet up with presenters whose work is related to your own. Stay in contact with the people you think are interesting and may be able to extend you. Keep the lines of communication open. When you're planning for an important presentation, critical friends can be useful readers of your script or audience for your rehearsals. In the early stage of your research journey, ask your supervisor for comments about your script. There's plenty of support for you at RMIT University, and we hope you'll make use of it as needed. Check out our other resources relating to presentations, and we wish you great performance success. Do you have any stories to share about presenting at conferences, at master's or PhD milestones, or the 3-minute thesis competitions? We'd love to hear your stories on the discussion forum. Cheers.